Hello folks, welcome back to the Edupedia world, and I am Abhinay Gupta. And today again we are continuing with the winding up, right? Referring to the provisions of the Companies Act 1956. Okay, so the main topic under consideration for today's lecture would be the creditors' voluntary winding up. So, if we consider we have already covered more than 60-65% of the chapter, after completing with the provisions of the compulsory winding up and the members voluntary winding up, we land to the second last concept of winding up, second last kind of procedure for winding up, that is the creditors voluntary winding up, which is very much similar to the members voluntary winding up, right? So if you have already seen the lectures on the members voluntary winding up, this lecture would be very easy for you, right? Because most of the things that we will be talking about in this lecture is common and will also I will be referring to those things from the members voluntary winding up lecture as well, right? So you'll find that, yeah, with little amount of changes, we have the entire concept of the creditors voluntary winding up. Okay, so one more thing that you need to keep in mind is that although we have some minute details, what I could do is I could just mention that, yeah, over here this changes, over here this changes, but I would again take you into with the story kind of a concept that we have always been discussing, right? Getting into the scene and understanding what is going on, right? So let us get into the shoes of the liquidator who has been appointed by the creditor in this lecture, and then we'll understand what is going on around us. Okay, and after this we'll again do with the last concept of winding up, which will be the winding up under the supervision of the court. So that will be something coming up later in the chapter, later in the lecture. Now we are concerned with the creditors voluntary winding up. Let us begin with it. So when we start with the winding up, right, the voluntary winding up as per the creditor, what do you think, what should be our first step? Right, if you reflect back to the procedure that we have followed for the members voluntary winding up, the first thing that we do is we call a meeting. Over there we used to call a meeting for the members, right? The general meeting of the members after the declaration of solvency had been provided, right? Over here we will not need that declaration of solvency. We will straight away go and call for the meeting of both the members as well as the creditors, right? But there will be a fixed sequence for that. So if you remember, when we started with the dissolution, or sorry, the winding up as per the member, right, the voluntary winding up as per the member, what happened is, first of all, the directors were supposed to give a declaration of solvency. Why? Because at that point of time the company was solvent, and that is why we had the members voluntary winding up. But when the company is not solvent, we call for the creditors voluntary winding up, because not all of them will be paid their amount, because we don't have that much, we don't have surplus amount to pay all the creditors their due. And that is the basic concept, the basic reason, the basic point of difference between the members voluntary winding up and the creditors voluntary winding up. So we do not have any declaration of solvency in this case, right? So what do we have? We'll see later. In the same slide, we'll see later what do we have instead of the declaration of solvency. So to start with, we first of all go ahead and call a meeting, a separate meeting for both. So if you remember, after giving the declaration of solvency, they used to send the notice to all the members for calling the meeting of the members, the general meeting, right? So we'll follow the same procedure over here, but we will have no definite date because no declaration of solvency has been filed. So the directors, they will send out a notice for the meeting of the members for the specific purpose, right? For the purpose of winding up the company. They'll call all the members, they'll hold the meeting. And when they are sending that notice to the members, along with that notice, they will also send the notice to the creditors. That dude, even you people are supposed to come. Either they'll call the meeting on the same day, like for example from 10 to 1 you had the meeting of the members, you break for lunch, and then again from 3 to 6 or 7 you had the meeting of the creditors. You can do that, or otherwise on the very next day. But it will be done only after the members meeting has been concluded, because there are certain things that have been discussed and decided in the members meeting that has to be rediscussed or considered in the creditors meeting, right? So along with the notice that they are sending to the member, they will also float out notice for the creditors. And then, because they cannot send out notice to all the creditors, they are sending to the major creditors, but there are also small creditors to the company, right? They cannot send the notice to all of them. So what will they do is, they will also advertise in the official gazette and the local newspaper, the newspaper circulating in that district, in which the registered office of the company is located, that yes, on so and so date, so and so time and so place, we are going to hold the creditors meeting because we want to wind up the company. And since we are not solvent enough to wind up the company by the members voluntary winding up procedure, we are not issuing a declaration of solvency. We want the creditors also to come because we have a lot of things to discuss with the creditors as well, because this is primarily gonna be the creditors winding up, so we need you, right? Obviously this is not what they send out, this is not what they write in the notice, but this is what they want to convey. That is the intention behind, right? So you hold the members meeting, you discuss a lot of things over there, and you have to reconsider some of it in the creditors voluntary winding up meeting. So when the creditors come, basically one of the directors, right, the director, they will choose among themselves that yes, Mr. X, you go and preside over the meeting of the creditors. So the director will go, he will present in the meeting of the creditors, it's his duty to preside over that meeting, and in that meeting he will lay the statement of company's affair. In the members meeting, we'll do exactly the same thing that we have done in the members voluntary winding up concept. We'll decide who the liquidator is, you'll pass the resolution, okay, now we are supposed to wind up, right, whatever things are going on, and you'll also nominate your liquidator. We have not finalized the liquidator yet. The liquidator will be finalized after we have had the discussion with the creditors. But yeah, the members over there will also nominate the liquidators, right? So in the creditors meeting, the director will lay forward the statement of affairs of the company, right? He'll give the full statement of the position of the company's affair, what is going on in the company, what is the position, why do you want to wind up the company, how do you don't have the money, what is the shortage and everything, right? And the list of the creditors of the company, right? He'll lay down the list, okay, these are the number of creditors in our company, maybe in ascending order or descending order. That major, these are the people who need this much amount, and then we have the other creditors as well, and the total claim that you creditors have amounts to so and so rupees, right? But we don't have that amount. We have something like somewhere around 50-60% of that amount, so we'll have to go priority wise. How do we settle it, right? That is why we have called the meeting, but we will have to settle it legally. Not all of you can jump over the director and say, hey, give my money first. No, you have to maintain the decorum, and then with the legal proceedings, the legal matters, the way everything goes legally, we will decide who is to be paid how, right? And for that purpose, we'll invite a liquidator. He will carry on the liquidation procedures, and then we'll settle down your amount, right? So that is how you call the meeting and what happens in the meeting, right? So in the members voluntary winding up, you did not include the creditors anywhere, unless and until you went insolvent 1 or 2 years down the line, right? But in the creditors voluntary winding up, it is not so that you won't involve the members. No, you have to involve the members. They are the owners of the companies, right? So when you're talking about the creditors voluntary winding up, you call for the meeting of both of them, the members as well as the creditors, and the creditors meeting will be following the meeting of the member, right? Now again, if you refer to the members voluntary winding up, you call the meeting, right? You said, okay, you passed a resolution, whether ordinary resolution or the special resolution, whatever the case said, and then you appointed the liquidator, and then you also fixed the remuneration for the liquidator, right? And when the liquidator was appointed, within 10 days you will send a notice to the registrar that yes, we have appointed this liquidator. But you have a little different scenario over here, because over here the members did not appoint the liquidator, they have just nominated a liquidator. They say that yes, he should be the liquidator from our end. They have appointed him, but he is not yet finalized. He is not yet appointed as the liquidator of the company. No, right? But whatever resolution the creditors have passed in their meeting, that resolution will have to be filed with the registrar within the 10 days. Right? Why? Because in their resolution you will have the liquidator finalized as well. Right? The procedure of finalization of the liquidator we'll see later in the slide, in the same slide. But now what you need to understand is that after the creditors meeting is over, within next 10 days the directors will have to send a notice to the registrar that yes, the creditors meeting was held and this is the resolution that has been passed in the creditors meeting, right? Now we'll discuss how the liquidator is appointed. We'll discuss about the appointment of the liquidator and the committee of inspection. Yes, this is the difference in the creditors voluntary winding up. In the members voluntary winding up, you had no concept of the committee of inspection. Although we have discussed the committee of inspection in one of the previous lectures, right, in detail. What is the committee of inspection? What are their roles, responsibilities? How are they appointed? And a lot of things. right? Over here we'll not get into that detail of the committee of inspection, but yes, we will give a reference to it, right? Because in creditors voluntary winding up, a committee of inspection is very important. So the major difference, if you see with the uh, members voluntary winding up and the creditors voluntary winding up, then you have that in members voluntary winding up you have the declaration of solvency, and in creditors voluntary winding up you have the committee of inspection. This is entirely two different concepts in both of them. Otherwise there are some minute differences and there is a difference in the procedure only. But again, you call the meeting, you send notices to registrar, you inform the ITO, you appoint the liquidator, you do all the proceedings, then you file the accounts, then the statements, and then dissolve. All those things will continue. That is a general procedure, right? That is a skeleton behind the procedure of the compulsory winding up, voluntary winding up by members, by creditors, or winding up by supervision of the court. That is the skeleton behind, that is the backbone, right? But then on that backbone, the entire muscles and the veins, they flow in different directions, right? So now we'll see how is the liquidator appointed in this case, because that is gonna be a little task for the company. The main issue is who would appoint the liquidator. Will it be appointed by the members? Will it be appointed by the creditors? Or will it be appointed by both? Then what would be the majority? Whom do we listen? Right? There's a lot of questions that should be running in your mind, and I will answer each one of them. Right? So just be with me for 5 more minutes in this lecture and you will understand how the liquidator is appointed. So now we start with the procedure of liquidator. So as we have seen that first the meeting of the members are called, right? The members, they discuss, they hold their meeting, and then they appoint a liquidator. We'll not say appoint because it is not final yet, so we say then they nominate a liquidator, that yes, this person is going to be the liquidator for us. 1 or 2 liquidator, whatever it is. If they want to have more than one, they can have more than one liquidator, no problem with that. And after the members meeting is over, either on the same day or the next day, we are going to conduct the meeting of the creditors as well, right? Now in the meeting of that creditor, you will lay the nominations made by the member. You lay down that yeah, these are the people who have been nominated by the members to be the liquidator for the purpose of voluntary winding up, right? And there the creditors will consider that nomination, and then they will have to decide. They will also nominate one person. Now if it is the same person, if they nominate the same person to be the liquidator, then that person straightforward be the liquidator of the company, becomes the liquidator of the company. But if they do not appoint the same person as the liquidator, what they can do otherwise also, we don't appoint anyone, we don't nominate anyone. What happens in that situation? The liquidator nominated by the members will become the official the liquidator of the company for the purpose of winding up. Other situation is, I'm trying to bring forward to you all the combinations of the situations that we can have, right? So the first combination we saw that the members, they nominated a liquidator and the creditors did not. Right? So the liquidator nominated by the member would be the liquidator for the company for the purpose of winding up. Second situation, the creditors nominated a member or nominated a liquidator and the members did not. So whomever the creditors nominated, undisputedly he is the liquidator of the company. Third situation, both of them nominated and both of them nominated the same person. Then the same person is the liquidator of the company. Fourth situation, both of them nominated, the members nominated somebody else and the creditors nominated somebody else. Like the members nominated Mr. X and the creditors nominated Mr. Y. So the nomination of the members will be ruled out, and straightforward the nomination of the creditors will be accepted. And then the Mr. Y in this case would be the liquidator of the company. Right? It is as simple. So if we accumulate it in a one sentence, in a one liner, then we say whosoever nominated by the creditor would be the liquidator. If at any point of time they do not nominate anybody, then the nomination of the members would be considered. Otherwise the nomination of the members will not be considered. That is the crux, right? Because this is creditors voluntary winding up. So when we talk about the creditors, the preference has to be given to the creditors and not the members, right? But creditors may be of any sort. There can be a lot of creditors. Maybe some of them, they have the knowledge of business, some don't have the knowledge of business. Some knows the liquidator, some of them do not know the liquidator. They can be creditors from a corporate sector, creditors from the layman, from the fields, uneducated people also, right? You can buy raw materials from them, right? There's no problem with that. So there may be a point of time that the directors or the members or other creditors, right, they do not feel that, no, this liquidator, I don't trust this liquidator, I don't trust this nomination that has been conducted. So within 7 days of that nomination by the creditors, they can make an application to the court that we do not accept the nomination made by the creditors, we do not accept this person as a liquidator of the company. You have the power to object. Otherwise the creditors, they take the advantage of the power, right? So unless and until there is a contra for the power becomes supreme. So even Narendra Modi is not being given all the power, right? He has the oppositions over there, and just because the oppositions are strong, that will curb him from doing anything out of his power, anything unreasonable. That is what makes him even more stronger. That is what makes him follow his path. That is why he's working so well, right? So that is what you have to understand, that you cannot give away all the power in the hands of one person. So the creditors will not be given all the power, and that power can be diluted and can be challenged in the court by the directors, by the members, or the other creditors, right? Now what can they make an application for? What can they challenge it with? They can say that the nominee of the members, right, the members whom the liquidator that the members have nominated, they shall be the liquidator of the company instead of the liquidator nominated by the creditor. That is the first thing, because over there both of them nominated different person. Members nominated Mr. X and creditors nominated Mr. Y, and we considered Mr. Y because the act says. But the court, you can challenge it in the court, no, we want Mr. X. So the court will see, the court will decide, right? The court will hear both the parties, they'll see everything, they'll see the worthiness of the liquidator as well, and then decide, okay, Mr. X or Mr. Y, who will be, and whatever the court decides will be final, right? Other thing what they can say is, okay, if we are not replacing the liquidator of the creditor by the liquidator from the members, do one thing, both of them will jointly be the liquidator, best way out, right? Let both of them perform, we don't have an issue. Otherwise also they can make a third statement that, court, we don't trust any one of them, please send your official liquidator over here. So the official liquidator can also be appointed as the liquidator instead of the nominees of the creditors or the members, right? Obviously in this case there was no nominee of the member, the nominee of creditor was appointed, so instead of that an official liquidator can also take the place, right? And then there's a general rule open that some other person will take away, not the nominee of the member, not the nominee of the creditor, not the official liquidator, a third liquidator, or sorry, the fourth liquidator has come into scene, please nominate him, and the court will decide whom to nominate. So let us leave all of these topics to be concluded by the discretion of the court, right? But one thing again is common between both the nominations, that is the nomination in the members voluntary winding up and the nomination in the creditors voluntary winding up, that a body corporate cannot be a member, cannot be a liquidator. Who will be the liquidator, who will not be the liquidator, that is, there's a challenge, there's a fight for that. But in any case the body corporate cannot be the liquidator, right? And again one more thing which is common, which is pervasive throughout the act, throughout the winding up chapter, is whenever the liquidator is appointed, may it be official, may it be by the members, may it be by the creditors, may it be anybody, he will have to inform, he'll have to intimate the registrar within 30 days. That is a pervasive statement, a pervasive act that has to be performed by the liquidator whenever he is appointed, right? That was all about the appointment of liquidator. And also we have the appointment of the committee of inspection. So you remember the committee of inspection? Over here, when the creditors are appointing the members for the committee of inspection, they cannot appoint more than 5 persons in the committee of inspection. The committee of inspection that we discussed about when we were talking about the compulsory winding up, we had a maximum of 12 people, but 12 people on the whole, including the member and the creditor in any proportion. Over here we're talking about the committee of inspection. Over here the creditors may nominate people, nominate the creditors in the committee of inspection, but consisting of not more than 5 persons. That is the limitation on the creditor in the voluntary winding up. So please keep that in mind. When we're talking about the appointment of committee, or whenever we're talking about the committee of inspection, we'll have to see where are we talking about the committee of inspection. Is it in the compulsory winding up, or are we talking about it in the creditors voluntary winding up, right? And then one more thing, we know that when the liquidator is appointed, we have seen in this part that the liquidator is appointed, then the board of directors, they cease to hold their power. Right? The day the liquidator takes charge of the office, the board of directors, they cease to hold their power. But again, in this scenario as well, if we compare it to the members' voluntary winding up, what did we see over there? That the board can continue to hold their power, if the members, they pass a resolution that the board would continue holding their power, or the director, they sanction the power back to the board of directors. They say that okay, let the board of directors continue with their power. Right? The similar thing happens in the creditors winding up as well. But over here, the members cannot say in their meeting that we will want the board to have their power. No. If the board can have their power, then they can have their power only if the creditors have sanctioned the continuance of their power. Right? But when can the creditor sanction the continuance? Only when there is no committee of inspection. Then all the creditors in general will sanction the power. But if they have made the committee of inspection, then you have 5 specific creditors over there whom you are giving all the power. So those 5 creditors in that committee of inspection can sanction the continuance of the power of the board. But if the committee is not prepared, then only you'll ask all the other creditors. If all the other creditors they want, they can sanction the power back to the board. Right? So that is the difference again between the members' voluntary winding up and the creditors' voluntary winding up. Right? Next, again, if we refer back to the members' voluntary winding up, what did we see over there? That if at any point of time there is a vacancy in the office of the liquidator, then that will be filled in by the members. Right? We saw that in the case of creditors' voluntary winding up, that will be filled up by the creditors. Now some of you must have a question. Why not? What if they have appointed the committee of inspection? No. The committee of inspection cannot decide to appoint the new liquidator. Right? They can decide upon the procedural matters that okay, the board can continue, the power is under the hands of the committee. Right? They will have a check on the liquidator's work. Okay, they have the power for that. But for appointing the liquidator, we cannot concentrate the power in the hand of those 5 creditors. No, we'll have to discuss with all the creditors in general. If the creditors have appointed the director, if the creditors have appointed the liquidator. But if the creditors did not appoint it, then who appointed it? The members? That is not possible. Because if the members have appointed it, that is only when the creditors did not appoint anybody. Or they appointed the same people. So even if they appointed the same people, we'll say it is appointed by the creditors. So when is it the situation that the creditors did not appoint? Oh yes, we remember. When the liquidator is appointed by the court. In the case when it was challenged, when the appointment of liquidator was challenged by the directors or the liquidator or the member anybody, or the creditor or the member anybody. Right? In that situation, the liquidator was appointed by the court. And if the liquidator was appointed by the court, the creditors will not have the power to reappoint any liquidator in the case of vacancy. Right? So that vacancy shall be filled up only by the court again. Otherwise there can be a problem, right? What problem can be there? So for example, the court sends Mr. W, you be the liquidator of this company, and the creditor, they chase him out. We won't allow you to work. They don't allow him to work, and one fine day the liquidator gets frustrated and he vacates the office. And then they say, okay, now he's gone, and we appoint our liquidator, and we are back to square one. So that is why, to avoid such a situation, the court says even if the office gets vacant, I will have the authority to appoint him again. You will not have the authority to do that. Right? So that is the rationale behind that. So the creditors would have the power to fill up the vacancies in the office of liquidator if it is appointed by them. Otherwise, the court, when they appoint, they will have the power to fill up the vacancies as well. Next, again, we talk about sending the notice to the registrar in the ITO. So who sends the notice? Whenever the liquidator is appointed, the liquidator will have to send a notice to the registrar. So the liquidator will send a notice to the registrar within 30 days of its appointment. And again, one more pervasive point that is present everywhere in all types of winding up is that they will also send a notice to the income tax officer. And even that will be done within 30 days of their appointment. Why? Because income tax officer, they should know that the company is being wound up. And if there is any liability on the company's end, if there is something due to the income tax department, then the income tax officer will have to inform the liquidator that yes, these are the dues. We are yet to receive this much amount from the company, and if the company is dissolved, we will not be able to recover it. So they will take 3 months time, they will scrutinize everything for the company, they will make an entire detail, the accounts, and then they'll send it to the liquidator that look, as per our records and as per the calculations we have done, this is the entire amount due from the company to us. So what will the liquidator do? It will be the responsibility of the liquidator that if he has come to that position of distributing money to the preferential allotments, then he will set aside some money for, he'll set aside that said amount for the government, for the income tax department, right? But yeah, if he doesn't have even that amount and he is barely trying to meet the secured credit and the workman, that means overriding the preferential payment, then he will not pay the income tax department, right? The income tax department will be paid only after the overriding preferential payment people have been paid, right? So setting aside the money does not mean that they are the first people getting the money. Please don't be confused with that, right? So that is all about the general procedures. There are 2 more topics, but I think the time in this lecture will not permit us to carry on with those 2 topics. We'll take it up in the next class, right? But I'll show you the gist of what the topics are. One is to call the meeting when the winding up continues for more than 1 year, right? We have seen it similar in the case of members voluntary winding up, and then we'll talk about the dissolution, right? All the points in dissolution. Okay, so over here we'll leave the topic till the point of send a notice to the registrar and the ITO, and the next, all the other points that I have just shown you on the screen will be discussed in detail for the case of creditors voluntary winding up in the next lecture, right? So until the next lecture, please stay tuned, revise these topics, come back for the next, and there we'll discuss the remaining portion of the creditors voluntary winding up. So until then, this is Abhinay Gupta signing off. Thank you and bye-bye.